All right, everybody. Rentals are part of the journey, but they're not the journey. Welcome to Growing the Money. Thanks for joining me this morning. Every weekday morning from 8 to 8:10, I talk about growing the money. I just give you my life experiences. I give you my journey a little bit, and I tell you my thoughts. So I've been expressing them a lot recently. And, I guess you haven't done anything online till you get a bunch of pushback and like everybody's all mad at you for everything all the time. So I'll take that as a positive, although that doesn't mean it's not hard to read. So, rentals. I've got a bunch of landlords that are upset with me, banging away at me online, banging away at me on DM. People I know, people I like. And, man, they just got this wrong. They got this wrong. Rentals are a great way to create wealth. They're a great way to create a chunk of money. That's what they do. That's their purpose. So when you do a burr, like if you do a burr, you do you do a classic burr where you're saying that you're into this property, I don't know, like 175, and you buy it at a discount correctly. You don't put any of your money in correctly. It doesn't always happen that way, but that's the objective. And then you end up with some equity in that deal. You end up making, let's just say $30,000. You make $30,000 in one moment in time. And that moment is on the refi. When you go refi the property, you get the equity in the property, which is the excess money in the property. And then so you can refinance it back out and you now have equity. Equity is wealth. Equity is a good thing. I bought a lot of rentals in my day. I like rentals. I don't know, can I say it any clearer? But the rentals are part of the journey. They're not the destination. And I had this wrong when I started my real estate investment career. I used to think 100 properties free and clear. Like that was the goal. That was what we wrote down on the 5-year plan. I think it was a 10-year plan. I don't want what is what is EOS? I think man, I don't know, 5 or 10 year plan. And so that was the objective. But during the process, I learned there was a better way. And that doesn't mean that landlording or owning rentals doesn't have a place, because they certainly do. They certainly should be part of your journey. And they should be part of your journey if you're trying to create wealth. But if you've already got some level of wealth, and by the way, Charlie Munger told us that the hardest number to get to for wealth, for investable wealth, income that is not in equity but is investable, the hardest number to get to is $100,000. And once you get to $100,000, it becomes easier to grow. Now, a lot of people have the moniker, well, the first millions, the second million is a lot harder, a lot easier than the first million. Okay. And it's the same thing, but at $100,000. And people get like, blah. They just they get in their minds a certain mindset and you can't break them of it. All right. Back to my point. So if I was making $500 a month off of my rental, and that's work, it's not passive. Now, I would tell you, I've owned a lot of rentals and I've never had a 2 a.m. call for a toilet. Right? That's not true. Anybody tells you that is also being exaggerating and not being correct. But what you have to deal with is you have to deal with the mental issues of dealing with other people's problem all the time. And that is the mental strain and the stress that is really what owning rentals is all about. And you're dealing with other people's problems all the time, and there's no room for your problems or maybe your family's problems or whatever. But that is the point of the stress. But let's say that you make $30,000 in one moment in time. It didn't take one moment, by the way. You probably put 6 months of sweat equity to get there. You had to find the deal. You had to renovate it. You had to put the tenant in there. Then you had to go to the bank. Then you had to go get it refied. But in that one moment of time, you create the equity like that. And now you have $30,000 of wealth. Okay, so you rent that house out for $500 a month in profit. And not all of it's cash, by the way. A lot of it's amortization pay down. And so you're making $500 a month. Over the course of a year, you're making $6,000. $6,000 return, especially with tax benefits, $6,000 return on $30,000 of wealth is awesome. That is a 20% return. You should do that all day, every day. But every single day after that, your return on wealth declines, that your equity grows. And everybody talks about that. Everybody's like, oh, you have to own rentals because it's not just about the cash flow, for which there's not a lot. It's all about I own the property for a decade or 2 decades or something like that. I own the property and now I create the wealth. But that's fine. But every single day of that decade or multi-decade journey, your return on wealth goes down. It doesn't go up. And while your wealth might be growing, it's not growing at a rate that will get you where you want to be. And that's where I came to in 2020 of, okay, I have all this equity, for which, by the way, like equity doesn't buy you anything. It doesn't buy you a box of crackers, right? It just sits in equity and looks fun on a balance sheet, and maybe your bank is impressed, but that's about it. But if you want to grow that wealth, being a landlord is not a particularly good vehicle. You grow your wealth at like 4 or 5%. And then everybody wants to scream, oh, well, you get appreciation. Okay. You get appreciation not because of being a landlord. You get appreciation because our federal government has been printing money since the dot-com bust. And we've had this free 3%, 4% type of money for a decade and a decade and a half, and appreciation just keeps going up. And people just think that it will always go up and that their rentals will just continue to gain and grow and grow. And that's not historically accurate. There has to be a pullback at some point. And so in reality, you're earning like 4 to 5% return on your wealth. And by the way, if you want 4 to 5% return on your wealth, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not throwing shade at you. You go and you keep buying your rentals. I'm simply suggesting that there is another way that you can gain way quicker, faster, easier wealth. And that is build your wealth to a certain point. And then you're going to have to change your mindset. And oh, by the way, you already had to change your mindset to go out there and buy all the rentals. How many people stood around you that were your neighbors or your friends or your moms or your children who told you not to go buy those rentals? And you had to change the mindset of I'm going to go out and be an entrepreneur and I'm going to do my own thing. You had to change your mindset to get to the landlording place. Okay. But you get stuck. Some of you get stuck with this idea that landlording is the only way that you can go and it's the answer to everything. And I am merely suggesting that you should take a chunk of the wealth and the equity that you have earned and you have built, and you should find a more efficient, and I mean more efficient by rates of return and more efficient on your time. And that for me is lending money. So for all of everybody who's getting mad at me for like crushing on landlords, I am not. Particularly this year when I think that the administration will give us cost segregation, bonus depreciation at 100% back, I will buy rentals. I just want to say it here, say it loud, say it proud, okay? But it is not the most efficient way to build my wealth. And it's just not. I'm sorry, but it's not. That's my Monday rant. I love you, landlords. But every single day that your portfolio grows in value, the rate of return on your wealth, don't say investment. Don't say I have $0 in it, so I get an infinite number. Sit down if you're saying that. The return on your wealth is what matters. That's how you grow to be the wealth that you want. Okay? And I'm not saying that money and wealth is everything. I'm saying if your goal is to grow the money, right? To grow the money, if your goal is to grow the money, there is a better way. My name is Rich Lennon. Go to richlennon.com. Everybody have a great day. I love you guys.